So now we go back to Gongchik, this short commentary by Khenpo Kunpal. And we are now at the last Vajra Statement of chapter 6. The title of chapter 6 is View, Meditation, and Conduct. So this is a very common three elements, or three elements that emphasizes that we need to have a view, we need to have right view, we need to have clear view, then we need to have methods to cultivate, called meditation, and then we need to have pay attention to conduct, meaning, off cushion. So view is developing clear understanding. And when it comes to that, the actual seeing of the nature of reality and completely seeing that and never again, be deceived by appearances, that is what we call a Buddha. Okay? Seeing that fundamental nature of phenomena, which is from one side looking at it, we say emptiness. From another side looking at it, we say dependent arising, which is another way of saying the unmistaken working of cause and effect. And that's the nature of reality that Buddhas see without mistake and without any interruption. So that's like, if you want to say, ultimate view. But that ultimate view, right now, of course, we are like blind men, that story about, right, a group of blind men are brought to meet an elephant. So because they cannot see, right, so all they can do is feel. In this case, I'm sure they can smell too, but all they can do is they can feel with their hands. And so one, went up and got close to the elephant's legs, touch. And they said, oh, an elephant is like a big tree trunk. Then another one, touched the ear and said, oh, an elephant is like a fan. Touched the tail, oh, an elephant is like a rope, and so on and so forth. So right now, our view is like that. So we need to know. Whatever we think we understand already about the nature of reality is all partial. It's obscured. That's another way of saying obscure, is that it's partial. It's not that it's wrong. It's only wrong if you grasp, if you only catch one side and you say, that's it, that's the totality, that's full. That's when it becomes wrong. But if you only see one aspect and then you understand and you realize, oh, I'm only seeing one aspect, then it's not wrong view. It's just incomplete view. But necessarily where you and I are at now, in terms of view, is incomplete. But by relying on the various different teachings that the Buddha gave, we can refine. One way of talking about this, we can refine our view so that what we see becomes more and more clear. Or, we can have better and better eyeglasses to fix our ability to see clearly. then this view has to inform our practice, our meditations, the various techniques, the various methods that we use. Seated meditation of this kind and that kind. The 4 foundations of mindfulness established through mindfulness of breath, for example. Deity yoga practice, Mahamudra, Fivefold Mahamudra, Dzogchen, JUL, all those things. Deity yoga, water offering, etc., etc. All those are the second part called meditation, often translated as meditation, or you could also use the word cultivation. Now, what are the methods that you're using to cultivate? Now, what are we cultivating? We are cultivating the view. We're slowly deepening the view, clarifying the view. So meditation or cultivation directly relates to view. Then it's not enough that when we are seated on our cushions, so to say, that we are cultivating the view. When we get off the cushion, our conduct in the world has to match our on-cushion cultivation, which matches view. So view, meditation, and conduct has to be cohesive, has to be non-contradictory, has to form a singular path, a singular approach to complete awakening. Especially Kyobpa Jigten Sumgon emphasizes the non-contradictory nature of all the teachings of the Buddha. In particular, in this case, view, meditation, and conduct. We should try to develop, cultivate an understanding of the relationship between view, meditation, and conduct that is non-contradictory, so that we don't have to stand at some point, at some place. We don't have to stand there with the predicament. Oh, I think this view and this conduct is in conflict. What should I give up? What should I compromise? Kyobpa Jigten Sumgon says, if you are actually doing it right, then there will never arise a situation where you think you need to compromise one or the other. And so that's the overall kind of flavor. So there are all these Vajra statements, these 20 Vajra statements in this chapter. They are coming at this point from different directions. And so then they also address various issues that came up during Kyobpa Rinpoche's time. With regards to the question of what is the highest view, for example. So the first few statements, if you all remember, right? He addresses various aspects related to what is the view. Yeah? Basically, he says, any view that is tainted with I, me, and mine isn't the final view. Doesn't matter how fancy you have mastered this or that philosophy taught by the Buddha. You say, I am a consequentialist of the middle way tradition, Prasangika Madhyamaka. You can say that, but as long as it's tainted with my view, then it cannot be actually viewing Dharmata, actually viewing nature of reality. And then in the area of meditation, he talks about, again, various issues addressed, but again, around that question of When we say meditate, when we say cultivate, what are we cultivating? How do we go about cultivating? And then finally, conduct. How do we carry ourselves? How do we conduct ourselves beyond the cushion? So anyway, now we're at the final statement in this chapter. And again, a reminder, a footnote. Kyobpa Rinpoche did not write and arrange the statements found in this text. This was arranged, this was collected and arranged by his faithful and probably, I would say, the most hard successor of Kyobpa Jigten Sumgon, which is Jing'a Sherab Jungne. He wrote these statements down and then he organized them into the chapters. Yeah? So 620 says, 620 says, if one is not endowed with the three Dharma practices, one is not different from listeners and self-realized Buddhists. Again, if you're not endowed with the three Dharmas, with the three Dharma practices, then you are no different from the hearers or the listeners and the solitary realizers. And so meaning, remember there are said to be three types of Bodhi realization. There is the enlightenment or the enlightenment, the awakening of a solitary realizer. There is the awakening of a hearer, a Shravaka. Commonly we call them Arhats. So there is the awakening of a listener or hearer, disciple. There is the awakening of solitary realized Buddhas, partaker Buddhas. And then there is the awakening of complete and perfect Buddhas. So here the statement is saying, if you are not endowed with the three Dharma practices, then at best, the awakening that you're going to reach is the awakening of the hearers and the solitary realizers, the self-realized Buddhas. Now, of course, the realizations, the attainments, the enlightenment of the listeners and the self-realized Buddhas are very, very, very profound. We should not, mistakenly think, oh, that's just, enlightenment for dummies. Because sometimes we think, oh, you see, Buddha is way better than these other two. Complete and perfect Buddhas are way better than the other two. And to become complete and perfect Buddhas, we have to become bodhisattvas. Oh, I have taken bodhisattva vows. Oh, I must be, more advanced, better than those who follow the solitary realizer path or the hearer path. That is simply a big misunderstanding, in fact, wrong view. In fact, the attainments of the solitary realized Buddhas and the hearer Buddhas are very profound. But here it's saying, but in comparison to the attainment of actual Buddhas, then they pale, right? They cannot compare to the state of perfect and complete Buddhas. So if then we want to be awake, if we want to awaken as perfect and complete Buddhas, then we need to have what is here known as the three Dharma practices. The three Dharma practices. So the three Dharma practices is avoiding non-virtue, practicing virtue, and benefiting sentient beings. So this is said to be the three disciplines of bodhisattvas. There is a very similar grouping of three. There's a very similar grouping of three to this one, which is avoiding non-virtue, practicing virtue, and purifying one's mind. So there's a very famous shloka, there's a very famous verse that says, it's in the Dhammapada, and it's in many, many places, that says, avoiding non-virtue, avoiding any and all non-virtues, cultivating every virtue, and completely purifying the mind. This is the teaching of Buddhists. So this verse is found in all Buddhist traditions. These three Dharma practices here is specific to those who advocate, those who promote, so to say, those who encourage practitioners to strive for complete and perfect Buddhists, to become complete and perfect Buddhists. Again, there are three types, of bodhis, of enlightenment. There is the hearer level of enlightenment, hearer or listener. There is the solitary realized, self-realized Buddha, enlightenment, and then there's the complete and perfect Buddhist. So Shravaka Buddha, Pratyeka Buddha, Samnya Sambuddha. Buddha Shakyamuni was Samnya Sambuddha. So for attaining the state of Samnya Sambuddha, then the three practices is different from the famous verse. Here is said to consist of three: avoiding any and all non-virtue, cultivating all the virtues. So same so far. But the third one, instead of expressing it as purifying the mind, right? Here it is benefiting sentient beings. And now you see, now is when, it basically turns into the Bodhisattva vow. In order to actually benefit beings, we have to want to benefit beings. Wanting to benefit beings is the Bodhisattva vow. Now, simply wanting to benefit beings, right, without understanding how to benefit beings or what is true benefit for beings, doesn't make it Bodhisattva vow yet. If you think, I want to benefit beings by making sure that everybody will never experience hunger again. It's amazing, this vow. And even more amazing if you can actually make it happen. But that doesn't make it bodhicitta. Maybe you don't like what I just said, but sorry, I cannot change what the Buddha taught. And Buddha says, that is great. That is such great compassion. That is such great loving kindness to have that motivation. I don't want anybody anywhere to go to bed hungry. Very good. But that is not yet bodhicitta. Only becomes bodhicitta when it includes the understanding that the ultimate problem that all beings face isn't hunger, isn't lack of comfort, all the things that we habitually chase after. Those are not what is truly causing dukkha or suffering for sentient beings. what truly causes dukkha or suffering for sentient beings is avidya, wrong knowing, not knowing. From not knowing or wrong knowing arises attachment and aversion. Then these three work together to give rise to. These three then work together to give rise to the 84,000 confusions, the 84,000 kleshas, the 84,000 afflictive emotions. So only when we understand that and say, now, in order to most effectively, most powerfully, most meaningfully help beings to become free, I need to commit myself to becoming a perfect Buddha. When that is there, then it's bodhicitta. So this three Dharma practices mentioned here, and the third one, benefiting beings, is not just, it includes that ordinary benefiting of beings, but that ordinary benefiting of beings have to be done with wisdom, with understanding as to what is the final good that we're striving to bring to all beings. So that piece is really important. So let's look at Khenpo Kunpal's commentary. Furthermore, regarding conduct, someone who spends his time in meditative equipoise and the so-called bushuku, conduct of nothing else than the three activities of eating, sleeping, and basically going to the toilet. So there is this, there's this term called bushuku. So famously, Shantideva, this great Indian master, his classmates called him bushuku. And the exact etymology of bushuku is actually unclear. So different Tibetan masters of the past have given different etymologies for this expression, bushuku. The most common one is saying that it's a contraction of three words. The first word is eating. Second word is sleeping. Third word is, going to toilet. Crudely, it's sort of like eat, sleep, shit. So it's said that Shantideva's classmates called him that because he was a prince of some sort. And so they dare not, and also Nalanda University. Maybe the father gave a lot of donation to the university, so they dare not kick him out. But behind his back, they called him bushuku, meaning that's all he does, Later, this term bushuku actually becomes very interesting. So later in Tibetan context, it turns into, from a term of insult, it sometimes turns into like a term of like serious practice. Like a serious practitioner sometimes is called a bushuku. Why? Now in Shantideva's case, of course, it turns out that he wasn't bushuku. In fact, his practice was so hidden that on the external level, all people could see was he only did those three things. He didn't do anything else. But the point with Shantideva is no. His practice is so hidden, so secret, that to ordinary people, all they can see is he's doing nothing in particular. That's the meaning of Bushuku in his case. But the later meaning of Bushuku, sometimes, it means this is someone who, other than practicing Dharma, only does these three other things. Eat when they have to eat, sleep when they have to sleep, and go to the toilet when they have to. They don't waste any time doing other things. And so a very serious Dharma practitioner can also say, I am Bushuku. Yeah, that means they don't go shopping, they don't go browsing the web, they don't watch Netflix, they don't download movies, they don't, debate politics, they don't do anything else. They just practice Dharma and Bushuku. Yeah? So here, it says, furthermore, regarding conduct, someone who spends his time in meditative equipoise and the so-called Bushuku conduct of nothing else than the three actions of, and those three actions definitely needs to be endowed with the three Dharma practices. So here Khenpo Kunpal is saying, a serious Dharma practitioner. So here Bushuku is used in the sense of, a serious Dharma practitioner. Need to have the three Dharma practices. It is not in order if one is not endowed with them. Meaning your practice, no matter how serious it might look to other people, your practice, oh, what a great meditator, oh, look, this person doesn't do anything aside the minimal he needs to do, she needs to do to remain alive. Otherwise, all their efforts are spent in Dharma. And maybe you see someone, that is very busy, doing Dharma things, maybe volunteering, or maybe studying Dharma, or maybe teaching Dharma, all of that, like, oh, they don't do anything else, just the minimal that they need to do. They don't waste any time. But if their practice don't have these three, it's not centered on these three things: avoiding non-virtue, cultivating virtues, benefiting sentient beings, then it's not really the path that leads to complete and perfect Buddhahood. It is like the noble master Nagarjuna, who did not accomplish his practice of a wealth goddess because of his attachment to a clay pot, and the master Dharmottara, who swung his key around overhead, causing his aspiration prayer of the truth of discipline to not get fulfilled accordingly. So now what is Khenpo Kunpal referring to? Luckily, footnote 576. The Indian master Nagarjuna was in retreat doing the practice of a wealth goddess. He was unable to see until his beloved clay pot broke. The story shows that Nagarjuna's subtle attachment to a clay pot prevented his spiritual progress. That's probably he was using a clay pot, probably maybe doing the water offering for this wealth goddess. Some of you know that kind of practice. In this story, I don't know the whole story, but in this story, the gist is, although he was trying to accomplish this perfection of generosity, the perfection of giving, and so cultivate the qualities of a wealth deity, it did not happen for him until this clay pot that he had, attachment to, even subtle, Nagarjuna was already a great master, so you can say his attachment is not like yours or mine, which is very gross, very unseemly. But Nagarjuna already so beyond that, but still there was subtle attachment to a clay pot. So not until the clay pot broke did he finally freed himself from that burden. And only by freeing himself from that burden was he able to accomplish the wealth deity. So that's Nagarjuna. Then what about Dharmottara? The Indian master Dharmottara had such a pure practice of discipline. So in Nagarjuna's case, the example is the practice of giving. And now next, an example related to disciplined conduct. So he has such a pure practice of disciplined conduct that he could make flowers grow magically by invoking the power of his pure discipline. One day he was very joyful after having completed a commentary on epistemology, some area of Buddhist philosophy. And so he walked around swinging his key overhead. La la la. Yeah. In other words, it was in a moment of like excitement. I finished, this very difficult book. So then he just absent-mindedly, that's the point. Because according to disciplined conduct, you don't do anything. Just let loose, we call. Right? After that, after doing that, no flowers grew when he tried to do it. That these flowers no longer did not magically appear. But when he had confessed his careless behavior and restored his pure disciplined conduct, the flowers again grew instantaneously from his prayer. There is this thing called by the power of truth. You often find in Buddhist prayers, by the power of truth, may this be fulfilled. So it's said that, of course, simply saying by the power of truth, if you have not built up your parami, your power of disciplined conduct in this case, simply mouthing by the power of truth, may blah 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 happen, may blah 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 happen, will not happen. Like in his case, even something as simple, forget about like actually causing harm, like killing or stealing, or even just yay, right? Compromises. Now, footnote. Does it mean that you cannot, let loose? Okay, don't practice your Dharma in such a tight way. Not, just letting loose, dancing and being, funny or whatever, right? It's only, I feel, right? It's only helpful, beneficial virtues if you actually build up disciplined conduct. If the disciplined conduct comes as a result of fear, so a lot of pressure, then your practice, becomes very unstable because it's based on fear. Certainly, in the past and also in Asian culture, teachers have used fear to get people to shape up, just like those of you born in Catholic culture, have experienced maybe fear and even trauma when parents or priests or whatever, or the church, use fear to make you behave, So then for us, need to be careful about that. So your practice of disciplined conduct should be try to make it more based on understanding and appreciation of why to be disciplined, and not to just say whatever you want to say, do whatever you want to do, even seemingly not harmful things. But in fact, if you actually look deeper into it, they compromise, and they take away from the mind being stable. So they say that, actually those training in bodhisattva training in bodhisattva conduct, even, like mindlessly pulling out grass becomes a fault. Mindlessly, okay? It's not saying, don't garden. But how often, right? We mindlessly do all kinds of things. Those of us with hair, mindlessly twirling. Those of us without hair, mindlessly. That's mindlessly. So you want to develop mindfulness. And with mindfulness, building up, then naturally, we become less and less mindless. Then the mind is stable. Yeah. Here there is a good footnote too about the three Dharma practices. So the three Dharma practices, as explained by Rizing Chodra, are certainty about what is faulty. That means avoiding all the non-virtues. Understanding that it is necessary to develop the qualities, cultivating all the virtues. And the altruism of loving compassion, benefiting sentient beings. Below, Khenpo Kunpal describes these three as discipline that avoids all faults, right? Same. Correct practice of the Guru's instructions, which is the practice of all virtues, and bodhicitta. So then the footnote says, in general, they can also refer to avoiding non-virtues, practicing virtues, not taming one's own mind. Here more specifically is benefiting beings. And these are the three collections of the bodhisattva practices, the three samvaras, the three collections called samvaras, the three collections. Thus, the cause for accomplishing the immeasurable qualities of a Buddha is surely indispensable practice of precious discipline that is unstained even by the most subtle wrongdoings. Likewise, one needs to understand the profound instructions from a guru who is endowed with a lineage and practice these correctly in mountain solitude. And especially one needs bodhicitta, the altruistic intention that only strives for others' benefit through great compassion. If one does not have any of these three, one is not different from listeners and self-realized Buddhas. Thus, an altruistic bodhicitta endowed with emptiness and compassion is needed. We must definitely have these three Dharma practices complete. If I want to elaborate on this a little bit, right? Kyobpa Rinpoche is not saying that the hearers and the solitary realizers don't have the first two. Avoiding non-virtues, and cultivating virtues. So Kyobpa Rinpoche is not saying hearers and solitary realizers don't have that. Kyobpa Rinpoche is saying the combination of these three, they don't have. So then the key point here is actually bodhicitta. But then simply having bodhicitta, or we think we have bodhicitta, but we don't pay attention to avoiding non-virtues and cultivating virtues, won't work also. Yeah? So we need to have both. So here, that's why he says, in summary, an altruistic bodhicitta endowed with emptiness and compassion is needed. In some ways, you could say avoiding non-virtues, cultivating all virtues, is the compassion and loving kindness side of bodhicitta. Then, the wisdom, the clear seeing side of bodhicitta is the wisdom side, the clear seeing, the clear understanding of what causes suffering and what is suffering and how do we end suffering for ourselves and for all beings, and making that resolve to achieve that. That's the wisdom side. So the three practices have to be combined together at all times. Then, so here is also saying, like you can settle your mind and let your mind kind of like reach stability with only the limited practices of solitary realizers and hearers. But lacking bodhicitta, you will not achieve complete and perfect Buddhas. You will not achieve the attainment of complete and perfect Buddhas. So this is the last statement. Let me quickly look at Rigzin Chodra's commentary. So his conclusion for this, he says, furthermore, since the accomplished excellent masters ably possess these three dharmas, they have accomplished the twofold benefit, benefiting self, benefiting others. Moreover, for ourselves too, if we do not possess these three dharmas, even though we think we are perfect, we will not become useful tools for the accomplishment of the twofold benefit. Therefore, the intention is that these three are by all means of great importance. So this is the statement 20. And so we have completed now chapter 6, and then soon we will start chapter 7, which is the vital points related to the result, the fruition, which is Buddhahood. So in the Buddhahood section, giving us some understanding of what Buddhahood is. Of course, we are not able to really understand what Buddhahood is until we are Buddhists. Buddhas, not Buddhist, Buddhas. Right? So Khenpo Kunpal's commentary for those 15 Vajra statements is only this much. In some ways, not much we can say, But we can say what Buddhahood is not. So it's more about clarifying these statements, these 15 statements going forward, is to clarify the major mistakes we tend to make with regards to what Buddhahood is. So we can say that these 15 statements can help us do that. And by helping us do that, then we get closer to what it means to be Buddha. But as for what it means to be Buddha fully and completely, only when we are Buddhas. Yes. So now let's do dedication at the end. First turn to page 9 of the opening recitations. And that again is a supplication to Guru Rinpoche for removing obstacles and fulfilling wishes. So the final obstacle the main obstacles we want to remove is actually what is the source of all obstacles? The source of all obstacles is self-grasping. From the root of self-grasping, then attachment and aversion all arise. Then the 84,000 kleshas that invite and bring the obstacles. Then all our wishes that we can think of, those wishes that we happily tell others, and those wishes that we are a little shy and keep secret, whatever they are, if you really examine them, they're all rooted in a desire to be happy. So that's really at the end what all our wishes are for. So here when we say, when we pray to Guru Rinpoche, who here is called the Buddha of the past, present, and future, like the essence of Buddhas of past, present, and future, source of all siddhis, subduer of Mara. When we say, grant your blessings, may all obstacles be removed, may all wishes be fulfilled, you should think, what is it that we're really asking? Don't turn Guru Rinpoche, don't turn Medicine Buddha, don't turn Buddha Shakyamuni, don't turn our Guru into a handyman to fix all the things that are broken in your house. Don't turn them into, these gods and demons, like in Asian culture. You have this problem, go to this god. You have that problem, go to that spirit. Or in the Catholic context, don't relate to them like they are the saints. Asking the saints, help me this, help me that. Please talk to God. Give me a break. Then the principle of Guru Rinpoche, as I've explained, there is a particular history, right? There's a particular history, or you could say there's a particular special interdependence related to this figure, Guru Rinpoche. Of course, Guru Rinpoche is very, very important. He is the main symbol of the Guru principle for followers of the Nyingma lineages. But Guru Rinpoche's significance is not limited to Nyingma. I think it would be a mistake to think that way. Because Guru Rinpoche, he helped establish the Dharma in Tibet. Without his crucial role and the principle that he manifested, Dharma will not be established in Tibet. In fact, in Guru Rinpoche's own time, there was no label Nyingma. In that sense, he is pre-sectarian. There's no division into this lineage, this institution, that institution. In Guru Rinpoche's own time, he was a great practitioner of the Buddha Dharma. So then we follow in his footsteps. And the principle he represents here in particular, because of the interdependence of his history and his role in the transmission of Dharma in Tibet, is that he was able to subdue the ancient spirits of Tibet in ways that the great Bodhisattva Shantarakshita, and the great abbot, and the great preceptor, the great Vinaya master Shantarakshita wasn't able to. Why Shantarakshita wasn't able to? Also due to interdependence. Khenpo Shantarakshita, the great Bodhisattva, had a different set of interdependence. In other words, commonly we would say a different set of circumstances. So that he was very good at convincing and teaching the human beings in Tibet. And he brought them onto the path. But as for bringing the ancient spirits onto the path, he did not have those interdependence. And in fact, he told the Dharma king of Tibet of that time, King Trisondetsen, and say, you need to invite this other person. He said, I've heard of him in India. Actually, I have not met him, but I've heard of him. But I know if you're able to invite him to Tibet, he has the interdependence, the circumstances to work with the ancient spirits. What has that got to do with you and me? When these stories are told, the outer interdependence is about the history of the transmission of Dharma to Tibet. The inner interdependence is talking about us. So that then that story of Tibet becomes a metaphor. Now, what is Tibet? Where is Tibet? This. This. This is now the landscape, the land of Tibet. Here. Yeah? Our reasonable, logical, rational side are the humans of Tibet. Then Shantarakshita's interdependence, we put to work to transform our reasonable, rational, logical side. So many of us are so impressed by Buddhist philosophy, by Buddhist reasoning, by Buddhist teachings. It's like, wow, makes so much sense. Wow. So clear. No nonsense, no fairy tales, So, it makes so much sense, right? Okay, good. Our humans are convinced. But our ancient spirits, oh no, they are in the background hiding. These are our karmic tendencies, our unreasonable, childish, whenever something goes wrong, just stomping feet. Those are the ancient spirits. To transform them, to convert them, so to say, we need the inner interdependence of Guru Rinpoche. So then, by relying on the outer interdependence called Guru Rinpoche, this particular figure from the 8th century in ancient Tibet, Indian master that went to Tibet, all of that, prayers related to him, we can begin to work on this more mysterious level, the more stubborn level. All our, what they call Chap, all our karmic propensities that are negative, these ancient spirits need to be transformed. So anyway, let's now invoke that principle and say, may it become alive in me and transform my ancient stubborn spirits. Guru Rinpoche, Buddha of the 3 times great bliss, source of all siddhis, wrathful subduer of Maras, who removes all obstacles, grant your blessings we pray. Through them may all obstacles, outer, inner, and secret, be quelled, and may all our aspirations be fulfilled. Yusan Sanje Guru Rinpoche Ngudu Kunda Dewa Chenpo Sha Parche Kunze Dudu Dapo Sa Sowa Depso Jinje Lomdu So Jinang Sangwe Parche Shiva Dang Samba Lungi Dumper Jinje Lom Yusan Sanje Guru Rinpoche Ngudu Kunda Dewa Chenpo Sha Parche Kunze Dudu Dapo Sa Sowa Depso Jinje Lomdu So Jinang Sangwe Parche Shiva Dang Samba Lungi Dumper Jinje Lom Dusan Sanje Guru Rinpoche Ngudu Kunda Dewa Chenpo Sha Parche Kunsa Dudu Dapo Sa Sowa Depso Jinje Lomdu So Jinang Sangwe Parche Shiva Dang Samba Lungi Dumper Jinje Lom. Sublime, precious, venerable, and glorious root and lineage gurus, assembly of Idam deities, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, and all assemblies of Viras, Viranis, Yoginis, and Tarkinis, please heed me. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana and the inherent root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 4 causes of samsara and the resultant states of hearers and solitary realizers. And may all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, particularly those enemies who hate us, obstruct us, who harm, those who create obstacles, Maras who mislead, and their Mara retinues, have happiness, be separated from suffering, and quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, and precious Bodhi. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may we benefit sentient beings with body, speech, and mind. May the afflictive thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind stream. May thoughts of name, fame, gain, respect, and so forth in this life not arise for even a moment. With my mind stream moistened by love, compassion, and bodhicitta, may I come under the care of virtuous spiritual friends. And having become as limitless as space, may I achieve the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. By the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. Okay, that's it for today.